Hello, shalom, and welcome to this episode of Congressional Conversations, where we discuss the priorities of New York's Jewish community with members of the New York Congressional Delegation. I'm your host, Michael Miller, the Executive Vice President and CEO of the Jewish Community Relations Council of New York, JCRC-NY. And today, hailing from New York's 13th Congressional District, which is in northern Manhattan and into the Bronx, we welcome Representative Adriano Espaillat. Congressman Espaillat has most recently been appointed to serve on the very powerful House Appropriations Committee and on their subcommittees of state, foreign operations and related programs, as well as transportation, housing, and urban development and related agency subcommittee. He also serves on the House Committee on Education and Labor, is the second vice chair of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, co-chair of the Congressional Latino Jewish Caucus, deputy whip of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, and a member of the Bipartisan Task Force for Combating Anti-Semitism, which we thank him. The man is very busy, very involved up on Capitol Hill, and we welcome to our show, to our program, Congressman Espaillat. Shalom.
Shalom. Thank you, Michael. Thank you for the JCRC for inviting me once again. We've had a friendship that now stretches 25 years, Michael.
Yeah,
25
incredible.
years.
Incredible.
Yes.
25 years.
So,
and
I'm happy to be on this program, and thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. 25 years and we're still in our 30s. So let's talk initially about some personal background. Tell us a bit about your upbringing, where you were born, when you came to the United States, and what inspired you to pursue the public approach to representing your community? What made you this political arena?
I came to the United States in 1964 from the Dominican Republic. It's a young boy, 9-year-old, and was thrust right into the Vietnam War that was occurring then as I was an adolescent and became of a draft age. I was part of the last draft lottery.
Really? Me too.
You had to go down to Times Square to get your draft card, and they would put your birthday in a lottery. And if you got chosen very early in the lottery, you were almost guaranteed that you were going to Vietnam. I was like in the 200s birthday. So, but the next year, obviously, the war ended, and so we averted that. Also, a civil rights movement, and had just come from the Dominican Republic where there was the U.S. intervention there. I think those three events really shaped who I was and who I am today, so that I could trace the roots of my involvement in politics to that era that I was growing up in, and seeing the Vietnam War on the 6 o'clock news and watching these civil rights events right around me.
Yes. And
people coming from the DR because of the U.S. intervention there. So those things were very much part of what shaped me and got me to have a sense of politics and public service and community. So, of course, that was important. Also, because as an immigrant, we came to a neighborhood that was in transition, and you have many Jewish and Irish families that I embraced us, right? As young people coming to the country, not speaking a word of English.
Yes.
I think we got a lot of support. The environment was vastly different than now. I may even dare to say. I think it was tender, and it was somewhat, I felt, embracing back then. And so I always remember that many of the folks that were around, the Jewish families and the Irish families, some of them were seniors that were there, and their children had moved on to the suburbs. were very helpful to us and extremely helpful to us. So we're very grateful to that.
That's from the Washington Heights community.
Yes, in the Washington Heights community, correct, yes.
Many German Jews moved to Washington Heights, many before World War II, before the Holocaust, and some after. Yeah, that is a very unique Jewish community in the New York metropolitan area.
Yeah.
And speaking of the Jewish community, obviously we have an identification with a strong identification with the state of Israel. So as the deputy whip of the Progressive Caucus, what's your perspective on the U.S.-Israel relationship and the importance, most importantly, of traveling to Israel? That's where we really first got to meet each other when
Yes, that's right.
back then as a state assembly member, to provide the travel provides a better understanding of the complexity of the conflict. So again, how do you work through these issues within the framework of the progressive movement?
Well, first, I encourage everyone to travel to Israel. I think that people need to be there to really interact with families there and fully understand what's going on the ground right there.
Yes.
I think it's important. And to me, it was a great experience. And since our first travel there, I went back again several times, and I hope to go back again one more time. And I really encourage everybody to do it. Look, the progressive members of Congress, I think, are open to that. In the vast majority of them are open to a dialogue, a genuine and transparent and honest dialogue with the Jewish and even and of course the Palestinian people as well. And so I think that there is no major issue. There may be some folks that disagree, and they're entitled to disagree if they want to. But I think for the most part, people are very much open to continuing in that tradition of honest and transparent and real dialogue with the Jewish people.
Yeah, and so thank you. And on the matter of foreign policy, as a native Spanish speaker, how do your constituents approach foreign policy concerns in Central and South America? Does your identity as a Spanish native Spanish speaker and origins within the Dominican Republic play a role comparable to our relationship with the state of Israel?
Oh, absolutely. I think that there's a lot of similarities between immigrants from Latino community countries in Central America, South America, and the Caribbean, and the Israeli people. I think that we find that that we still have a very defined vested interest in what happens back home. We still send money to families back home. We still have a relationship.
Yeah.
Because there's family members that live there. We of course love the politics back home. And so sometimes we love it a little bit more than the politics here. I made that. But of course, the politics there, as let's say in the Dominican Republic, very lively. Right. It's like a national sport, right?
Right. Similar in Israel, same thing.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of similarities, right? In what happens in those two communities. And so I find that very often I look to see how the Jewish community is handling certain issues to get some tips. Right. On how perhaps I can handle some of the issues back home or in Latin American countries.
That's interesting. But there's one spot in the Jewish heart that is reserved for the Dominican Republic for the role that it played during the period of the Holocaust. Can you go into that for our viewers, please?
Sure. Many people may not know, but I think more people are becoming quite aware of it. The story of Sosua. Sosua is a beautiful coastal town with a beautiful beach. And of course, during the war and during the Holocaust, the Dominican Republic was the first country to allow survivors to settle there. And they had a very prosperous community there. And there's still many folks from that community in the Dominican Republic. And there's been a kingship and a long-lasting relationship with that bond that was established through what happened back then. To the degree that now we're working together, and I was part of a conversation with the Jewish government, the Israeli government, and the Dominican government officials are talking about cooperating on COVID-19 related matters. And I'm happy to be part of that, to continue to foster and of course, to continue to keep up the long-standing tradition of cooperation and friendship between the two countries.
Yeah, and I very much appreciate that. As you know, I've been a part of those conversations as well, and the role that you have played has really been so significant, and we're very grateful to you for keeping that line of communication open between the Dominican Republic and the state of Israel. But lines of communication are one thing; education is another. And education on the Holocaust is exceptionally important. What are you doing as a member of Congress to ensure that constituents in your district receive education about the Holocaust?
Well, I'm working with several members of the Jewish community here and former students, alumni of George Washington High School to try to introduce curriculum in that school. And of course, the superintendent has gracefully agreed to do so. Unfortunately, we were hit with COVID and everything got backed up, but I hope that we're on schedule for next September to be able to include that curriculum as a pilot project in the high school, which, by the way, has a great tradition there. You know, Henry Kissinger graduated from Jacob Javits, and a bunch of other luminaries from the Jewish community graduated from that school, which is predominantly Dominican now. But it would be great to have Dominican students there learn a little bit more about the Holocaust and the Jewish people in general. And so I'm working to do that as a pilot project, and then to see how we can duplicate that everywhere else.
Yeah, I have a warm feeling in my heart for that high school, which we refer to as GW. I was a student at Yeshiva University for high school and for college, and played many basketball games utilizing the gym at GW.
By the way, congratulations on the winning record for the Yeshiva basketball team.
Yeah, that's quite extraordinary.
Are they still undefeated?
I believe they ended because they couldn't go into the playoffs because of the holidays. I think something came up, but yeah, they finished the season undefeated, which is
great. That's
incredible. So back to the immigration issue and SUSUA. Are there lessons that can be learned here in the United States pertaining to an immigration system in this country, which clearly has been broken for many years, in terms of how we manage our own immigration policies and asylum seekers? Are there lessons to be learned from the history emanating from the DR?
I think so. I think that that asylum seekers are very special people that should be attended to because no one really likes to leave their homeland. You know, I think people like to travel and they like to visit, but no one wants to permanently leave their homeland with, in many cases, with no real plan of returning back. You do that when there is a traumatic experience, you know, that propels you and compels you to leave. And so I was just down at the border and I saw some of the young men there. And these are folks that are running away from violence. Many of them are trying to be recruited by gangs. Some of them are the children of shop owners that have been extorted by the gangs and told, if you don't pay, you know, we're going to hurt your kids. And so they leave. Some of the moms that travel with their small children from thousands of miles do so because of a food security issue. 2, 3, 4 or 5 years of drought. Recently, a volcano erupted in Guatemala. These natural disasters have created a very acute, very deep food security issue that often propels folks to migrate. Governments there are not the most stable governments as well. And so asylum seekers should be given a very special treatment. And I think that each case should be considered on its merit, and we should be able to embrace them and ensure that nobody's gaming the system, but that those that are really fleeing those conditions are given the opportunity to enter the United States,
Right.
including New York City. I met a couple of young men who said that their family members were here. I would like to see how I could assist in connecting again and reuniting with their families.
Right. Well, with immigrants come some not so pleasant sidebar issues. One of them is xenophobia, fear of the other. And clearly there has been a rise of hate and hate crimes. We saw what happened on January 6th. We saw what happened a year ago in terms of anti-Semitism. You're a member of the bipartisan task force for combating anti-Semitism that I mentioned at the outset. What are kind of the solutions that are being wrestled with this within the framework of this task force for dealing with hatred? And we've seen, of course, a horrible rise of hatred directed against Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, both here in New York and across the country. So again, what lessons can be learned from history, and what actions can be taken in the present?
Well, first and foremost, I think that we need to be very assertive in terms of ensuring that those that perpetrate hate crimes face all the weight of the law, right? People understand that these are crimes that we will be prosecuted, and that we will not tolerate that kind of behavior against anybody, whether for race, ethnicity, religion, we will not tolerate that kind of behavior. So I think that message needs to be sent out. And I think that the approach that we've seen recently against those people that are perpetrating crime against our Asian Americans and Pacific Islander brothers and sisters is the right approach. A condemnation across the country. I was just at a vigil this 2 nights ago in support, in solidarity with the Asian American Pacific Islander community. And so that's the first thing, the law, and that we will enforce the law, and that law enforcement will have a clear understanding of what hate crimes are, and that they will have units within their own departments that will address these hate crimes, and will have the tools and the specialty to be able to pursue them. So that's the first thing, right?
Yes.
Second thing is about educating people and making sure that education is a very powerful tool.
Yes.
And we must continue to educate, particularly young people, children at that age in the school system must get access to that kind of education to dismantle any behavior that could lead to someone perpetrating a hate crime or believing that they can commit a hate crime and get away with it. So these are the efforts that I think that we should pursue. It's important that we do that we target also groups that are fostering and this kind of behavior. They are out there, that we are watchful of social media to in turn intervene with any of the groups that are out there peddling this bad behavior and horrible behavior against differences. I think that we are a country and a city where diversity is probably our biggest strength, and we must in turn protect it.
Yes, very, very much so. We also need to protect people from criminals, uh, um, while also taking a look at criminal justice reform at the same time. So what is your approach to criminal justice reform, and particularly on the death penalty?
Well, I'm a strong opponent of the death penalty. I carry the death penalty bill, which has over 80 sponsors right now. And really, the death penalty is a Byzantine, archaic method of punishment that not only will not deter crime, but in many cases has been determined that it has been applied disproportionately to racial minorities, and also that it has been applied to people who later on have been determined to be innocent. So it has been wrongfully applied. So we must eliminate it once and for all. And we're hopeful to pass the legislation. And if not, we're hopeful that the president will sign an executive order doing the same thing.
Yeah. So let's move on to healthcare and COVID-19. How has your district been impacted by the pandemic, and what are some of the initiatives that you have put through to help all New Yorkers through this pandemic? And one of the great concerns that JCRC has is within the framework of healthcare disparities, that there are differences in terms of how people are treated. We have a coalition right now. It's in Brooklyn, but we hope to be able to spin off other coalitions around the healthcare disparities in multiples of boroughs. But again, the pandemic is impacting on everybody. What can Congress do, and what specifically have you been able to focus on in terms of ensuring that everyone has access?
Well, first, obviously, Michael, you know that the pandemic has hit neighborhoods where those health disparities have been most pronounced. And unfortunately, that includes Northern Manhattan, Washington Heights, Inwood, Harlem, East Harlem, and particularly the Northwest Bronx.
Yeah.
There are high levels of diabetes, respiratory diseases like asthma and others, high blood pressure. These are the illnesses that COVID goes after, right? And eventually, this is what kills people. So we've seen a disproportionate numbers of deaths and illnesses during this pandemic. And of course, we've have allocated a record amount of funding for hospitals. We also happen to have probably more hospital beds than any other congressional district in the nation, with Mount Sinai, New York Presbyterian, Montefiore, Metropolitan, Harlem Hospital, Northwest Bronx. We also have a very rich and strong network of community-based providers, primary care physicians, and others. And so we've allocated record funding for testing first.
Yeah.
We had significant numbers of testing sites. We also allocated funding for the hospitals that treated the patients. And of course, during the tough months of February, March, and April, those hospitals did a tremendous job, and particularly nurses and doctors and other healthcare workers were really heroes during the pandemic. From the economic perspective, also, we saw like a tremendous hit against small businesses and
Right.
small mom and pop businesses. So we were able to capture $10 million from the hospital to give immediate funding for these businesses, and of course then advocate for these businesses to apply to the Paycheck Protection Program and other programs administered by the Small Business Administration. And we're in the process right now of the second phase of the PPP program, and we're trying to increase significantly the number of folks that will benefit from it, the number of businesses. Of course, and now we're in the vaccination phase, and so we had the Armory, which has vaccinated now close to 90,000 people. Also, we have the Yankee Stadium, which vaccinates 24/7, and several pop-up sites that are vaccinating people across the district. And so we've done a very aggressive campaign
Yeah.
to vaccinate people across the district. And we're hopeful now that in addition to pharmacies and the pop-up sites, that local community-based physicians will be able to also give that shot in the arm.
Yeah, and similarly, thank you. In regard to the labor force, how has the pandemic hit the labor force, and what can be done to help stimulate growth? And is the president's multi-trillion dollar infrastructure plan going to be helpful in addressing the needs of working Americans and working New Yorkers?
Well, for me, it's very critical because I have a small project, which is the second phase of the Second Avenue subway, the $7 billion project that I think will really improve the economy there and fill the void for a transportation desert in East Harlem. But it's really a regional project because it connects to Metro North and 125th Street. It reduces overcrowding in the most overcrowded line in the city of New York, which is the Lexington Avenue line. No, it's not the 7th train, it's the Lexington Avenue line. So, and it would also connect by bus to LaGuardia Airport and to water transportation, water taxis, potentially in the future on the west side of 125th Street. So it's really a regional project. But the important thing about the project is also that we're looking about it being a model for the rest of the country in terms of the opportunities that it will provide for jobs for local people, particularly young people. And so I'm working with Congressman Charlie Rangel in putting together this Transportation Infrastructure Institute at City College. And hopefully that institute will be able to train the young people to be able to compete for those high-paying transportation infrastructure jobs that will be available when we do this $2 trillion package deal, which I think will revolutionize the economy and bring significant jobs, not just for road, bridges, and tunnels, but you have broadband, and you have the water system, and you have also hospitals and schools and public housing that are part of our infrastructure. So it's going to be very robust, and I'm looking really forward to it to make sure that it benefits the constituencies that I serve.
So, right, that's exceptional. So we've talked about healthcare, we've talked about small businesses, we've talked about labor. Let's talk a little bit about affordable housing, where the current pressures on the cost of living and the need for affordable housing. What are some of the solutions, and how would they again impact on the 13th Congressional District?
Well, first is that we put money into a rental assistance program that will assist many tenants that are backed up with their rent. So that's important that in the last package, COVID-19 relief package, we included over $20 billion for rental assistance. But in addition to that, I think that changing the narrative to ensure that transportation infrastructure includes public housing is an important accomplishment if we're able to do that. Because for example, repair NYCHA, it will take billions of dollars, capital dollars, to be able to uplift the quality of those housing conditions to the level where they need to be. And so that's something that we'll be fighting for, to change the traditional language of transportation and infrastructure, and to include our public housing stock as part of our infrastructure as well.
Do you think that thank you. Do you think that all these issues can actually be adequately addressed during, right now it's a 2-year period where the Democratic Party controls the House. They barely control the Senate, but they do. And of course, they have the executive branch, they have the White House. Is there enough time to get all of these projects through the pipeline and to impact on the day-to-day lives of New Yorkers?
Well, I think the American people are happy with the kind of help that we have brought forward, particularly with the last package, the stimulus checks, the unemployment benefits, rental assistance, the help for state and local governments, very, very critical, Michael, because if we didn't do that, then state and local governments will be forced to cut programs that are important to many communities across the state and the city. And so this is an important package. I think that the American people are happy that we're doing that. I think that they're looking forward to the transportation infrastructure package, because it will not just be about giving a facelift to our country, but it will also be about creating hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of jobs. And so
Right.
it's good for the economy. And I think that that will earn the respect and the support of the American people, and hopefully we'll be in the majority for a long time.
Do you think that there's a possibility of reinstituting the SALT, the state and local?
Yeah, I think there's a good shot that that will happen. And SALT is so important
So
to the
important.
economy, to the housing market. It's
Yeah.
so critical to investment and families, middle class families' ability to write off in their taxes and get the most for their investment. I think it's important that we do that again.
Great. So let me turn very, very local, but citywide. We have mayoral elections coming up and a big primary coming up on June the 23rd. So amidst this pandemic, with rising acts of hate we've talked about with the Asians and the anti-Semitism and black against blacks racism, what are you looking for in the next mayor, without mentioning names, but what qualities, what values are you looking for in who the next mayor of the city of New York is going to be?
I think it has to be a mayor that knows, really truly knows the city and the different neighborhoods of the city.
Mhm.
Remember, this is a melting pot. This is, as David Dinkins used to call it, a gorgeous mosaic.
Right.
So I would like to see a mayor that really knows the city and that will go to Flushing, Queens. I understand that there's a big Asian American community there and knows where the best restaurants are and who the leaders are and who he or she needs to speak to. That will come to Washington Heights and understand that Google has already named Washington Heights a little Dominican Republic, and will be able to. By the way, one particular candidate was born and raised here, so I'm sure he'll remember that. This is not a partisan discussion, so I'm not going to say who that is, but people could Google him. And of course go to Coney Island and know that there is a Russian American community there.
Right.
And there's an area called Little Odessa there, and go to the West Bronx and understand that there's an emerging West African community there, and that you have Albanians in the Northwest Bronx, and that you have a strong Jewish community right here in Washington Heights still. You have a Soviet Jewish community and a German Jewish community right here.
Right.
And someone that will know, so like the nits and crannies of each community, that's what I'm looking for. And someone that will be then had the ability, and this is a tough one, but I think it could be done, to bring everybody together. That's what I'm looking for.
Wow. Well, there's somebody who just spoke to us now, Congressman Adriano Espaillat, who knows the nooks and crannies of New York. And we are thrilled that you have spent so much time with us on this program. And would you like to share a last final words with us, and particularly as we're celebrating the holiday of Passover?
Yes,
In the Jewish world, in the Christian world, Easter is coming up. This is what is referred to as Holy Week. Please share a few thoughts with us.
First, a happy Passover and a happy Easter to everyone. I'm so sorry that we're still battling with COVID and people won't be able to be together the way we have been in the past. But I'm sure that next year for this season, we'll be able to do that. And I really want to thank the JCRC, Michael Miller, who's my good friend, and his team for being allies in a common struggle, and that is to be true New Yorkers and love thy neighbor.
Thank you very much, and I'm very, very fond of you too, and your team. So without mentioning names, they know who they are, and you have a.
I'll say hello to Anais for you.
Okay, we mentioning her. Thank you to Neri. Thank you to David. And really, it's been a pleasure working with your office and continuing to work with your office. To our audience, thank you very much for watching, for viewing. To learn more about some of the issues we discussed today, you can check out JCRC-NY's 2021 Focus on Communal Priorities, which is on our website, jcrcny.org. We look forward to see you next time on Congressional Conversations. Thank you to Congressman Adriano Espaillat of the 13th Congressional District for joining us. Shalom to all. For those who are observing Passover, Chag Sameach, a happy holiday. And to our Christian and other friends, happy holidays during this holiday season. Be well. Shalom. Thank you.
Bye-bye.